They've overstepped the bounds, and they violated the whole concept of our revolution and our Constitution.
Welcome, everybody, to the pre-Independence Day extravaganza here at the Freedom Link. I'm Joe Joseph, and Gwen Caldwell joining me. You know, how independent do you really feel? That's the question that I have for each and every one of you tonight as we talk about, tanks in the street of St. Louis and drones flying over the sky. We'll talk about all that kind of stuff tonight. But what's even funnier, or more funny, is the fact that history's been rewritten in so many ways. And I want to just preface a few of these before we have our guest come on. You know, the first thing, Gwen, who authored the Declaration of Independence?
Our founding fathers.
Yeah, for the most part. Thomas Jefferson, he wrote the first draft of the Declaration. But John Adams and Benjamin Franklin did a lot of editing, and then Jefferson took their edits and incorporated them into what would be the final version of it. So, really, it was a trifecta of founding fathers there: Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Ben Franklin. Now, did you know that Independence Day really should have been on July 2nd, 1776, not the 4th? And that's the July 2nd's the day that the Continental Congress actually voted for independence. John Adams in his writings even noted that July 2nd would be remembered in the annals of American history and would be marked with fireworks and celebrations. The written Declaration of Independence was dated July 4th, but was actually signed August 2nd. So July 4th is just on the piece of paper itself, but really had no relevance as far as the actual acts themselves. It's interesting, though, but that's the one that we choose to celebrate. So it's very interesting. Right off the bat, there's
lies,
deception, lies, damn it. And it's because of all this that I chose to have somebody on tonight that I'd like to highlight, because his actions are kind of in keeping with the tradition of the Founding Fathers and fighting for liberty. So I'd like to welcome Jim Babb, and he is part of the organization, the Valley Forge Revolutionaries. You may have seen him on YouTube, folks. If you go to YouTube, you can find a video said Police State Checkpoint Nullification in Upper Moreland, Pennsylvania. And if you search that, you'll find one of their street actions where it's one of the most unique street actions I think I've ever seen. So I'd like to welcome Jim to the broadcast. Jim, welcome aboard.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no sweat, no sweat. Yeah, I'll tell you what, this was forwarded to me on Facebook. And what struck me as the most interesting thing about how you conduct this, and because I've seen this tactic employed before. Another person that I've had on a prior broadcast runs a website called speedtrapahead.org. And he does the same thing, only he just pulls it out of the back of his truck after he finds a speed trap, and he goes about 1,000 yards down the road, and he just put speed trap ahead. So, I mean, but you know, when he gets confronted, he talks to him and ends up getting in a lot of trouble. In your particular instance, in this last street action, you didn't say a word. What drove you to that?
Well, I have nothing to say to them. This is a community service action, and it's not original. And I've seen things like this on copblock.org, and I have friends that have done things like this before. But we kind of sort of stumbled into some information about a series of, they call them DUI checkpoints. I call them suspicionless checkpoints. In Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, we got a schedule for the whole summer about when and where they're going to be doing these things. So we said, well, this is, we've got a little bit of heads up. Let's make some signs and just get out there. So for about $50 in reflective tape and some signs and a few man hours, we were able to bring some people out to this first one and just basically warn travelers that there was a suspicionless police state checkpoint up ahead and to exit now. Just turn now if you don't want to deal with the cops. And I just considered it just basic community service, just warning people. If you knew that the road was washed out, you might want to warn them of the danger. If you knew that there was a forest fire ahead, you might warn them. If there's highway bandits loose, you would want to notify your neighbors of that. And so that's what we did. And we've got a few more of those coming up. We have one coming up on July 6th, and several more throughout the summer. And it's a great opportunity to just help people. And based on our inside information, we found out that through us being there, we spared between 10 and 20 people a trip to the jail that night. In fact, they went for hours without arresting anyone, and they were quite livid about it, it turns out. They were very upset.
Taxation by citation at its finest, eh, Gwen?
No kidding, asshats. Oh, hey, so Jim, if you talk to the police when they are indicating that they're not happy with your public service, they can hold that against you, because then you're forfeiting your Fifth Amendment right. Is that not so?
Well, that's what I think. I mean, they say anything you say can and will be used against you, but it's more than that. By even having a conversation creates an opportunity where they can say that you said something. So, I try not to even give them that opportunity if I can possibly avoid it. So, basically, we have nothing to say to them. We're not there to talk to them. They're not our friends. We're not there we don't need to explain ourselves to them. And, and that just, it's a basic, protection for us. But the other main protection is a group of people and plenty of video cameras rolling. And that's what I recommend to anybody that's going to try to engage these highway bandits. Don't go it alone. Do not go out there and put yourself at risk, because they will just say anything. In fact, I just saw there was a popular story going around the internet right now about a young woman who actually went to jail for 12 hours for holding up a sign. She was on her bicycle. She saw some kind of a speed trap. She made a quick sign on a grocery bag, and they took her to jail. They told her she was, this is obstructing justice. And they took her to jail. They were only they can't charge her with that, so they charged her with blocking traffic. Okay? Again, ridiculous, but she was alone. She had no video. But when you're with a group and everybody's got a camera, there's really not a whole lot they can do. You don't break the law. You just, you stick to your guns. You don't block. Obviously, you don't want to block traffic or put anyone in danger, but they know there's nothing they can do about it. You're just basically expressing yourself, and this is the kind of action, if you happen to get with it when one of these things is happening, you can really save a lot of people. And we got so many honks, people waving. A woman came by. She came by. She handed us $20. She's like, "Get some coffee. Appreciate that." Like, people were so grateful for this kind of service.
You're not kidding, Jim. We find that a lot, especially in what we do in radio. People love to be informed. They love to be given a choice. And that choice has been taken away from us in so many different ways. And we'll talk more about that when we come back from break, folks. So don't get away. Wow. And it's only the first segment. Good Lord. We'll be right back with Jim Babb from the Valley Forge Revolutionaries. When we come back, you're listening to The Freedom. Welcome back, folks. Don't forget the email address to the Freedom Link is thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. Joe Joseph and Gwen Caldwell, joined by Jim Babb of the Valley Forge Revolutionaries. Did a great street action the other night in Pennsylvania, where, I mean, it's so hard, Jim, to I don't know how to say it, to be able to do these actions and actually see the fruits of your labor actually benefit people instantaneously. So, I mean, what you did was great. What is it that started you on this journey to be so active, involved in these libertarian projects and actions?
Well, it's been a while, but I guess I sort of discovered libertarianism. I guess I was flipping channels on C-SPAN, and I saw Harry Brown a long time ago. He was the Libertarian Party presidential candidate, and I saw him on TV, and he just made a lot of sense. I'm like, wait a minute, here's a guy running for president, but I actually agree with him, and he was talking about just leaving people alone, and he was describing the non-aggression principle, and the principle, basically is. You know what? Just you live your life your way as long as you don't interfere with somebody else's life. You own yourself, and that's just don't initiate force against somebody else. And any kind of peaceful, voluntary relationship is fine. And that just made a lot of sense to me. And I started sort of looking into libertarianism. I guess I'd already been a libertarian, but I didn't really put it all together in terms of a coherent philosophy. And that kind of got me started. And then I started reading and started meeting more libertarians. And that was in the, I guess, sort of the late 90s. And then by the 2000s, I met more libertarians and found our local group in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and we just started doing stuff. And one of our first actions was it was around the time that the Iraq War was about to begin, and there was all the war drums were beating, and Clear Channel was doing these massive, like, pro-war rallies around the country, and me and one of my libertarian friends, Darren Wolf, we heard about one of these things, and we said, hey, why don't we go, and we'll just pass out flyers sort of describing the Founding Fathers' vision of foreign policy about, honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none, and maybe suggesting perhaps Congress should declare war before the bombs start falling, little things like that.
Yes, mundane details.
And it was me and Darren and about 10,000 warmongers went out to Valley Forge Park. We're like, wow.
Good Lord. Those aren't good odds, but hey, did you notice or make a change in anybody's opinion or view on things when you did that?
Well, the first thing I noticed was that bringing 500 flyers was terribly inadequate. And we passed them out in about 20 minutes. We were empty-handed. And I really wasn't sure, and I really don't think we had that much of an impact. At least I have no way of knowing if we did on anybody who was there. But Pierre Robert found us, who was a prominent radio DJ for Philadelphia, and we did a radio interview. And I was like, wow, this is sort of it was a first major media exposure for me. And I said, wow, this is, you can actually get a message out, not by blending in, but by, sticking to principle and getting out there. So, by differentiating yourself, by standing up for just, basic decency.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how that can, it's quite a contrast to the background noise when somebody just says, you know what, no, I don't think we should be killing a bunch of people in a foreign country. So that was one of the first actions, and I've been involved with all kinds of things ever since then. Either it's End the Fed rallies. We've had a great project. We still do stuff against the TSA. I started a website with my friend George Donnelly called WeWon'tFly.com, protesting the TSA. We do airport demonstrations, trying to give people an idea about their, just the dangers of airport travel and what the TSA is doing to people. That's been a big success. We do jury nullification outreach, fully informed jury association pamphlets. We pass out pamphlets at courthouses informing jurors that they have a right to judge the law itself, not just the facts of the case, which I think is very important. So, really there's all kinds of opportunities for outreach and activism. And, I encourage people to seek out like minds and, just try something, because it is extremely rewarding. And once you get a taste, once you see a little bit of result, it's really great. And I think that's what really made this checkpoint nullification particularly fun, is because all of these events, all of these educational outreach things that we do, it's very difficult to see the immediate result. But with this checkpoint nullification, you see somebody turn off. They see the sign, they wave at you, they turn off, and you go, wow, that's somebody saved.
Yeah, that's awesome. And something, yeah. It's about personal responsibility, and our responsibility as people, as the people, to hold these people in check. Gwen, and that's what's sorely lacking, isn't it? Is that the personal responsibility aspect of the whole thing?
Well, I don't drink, and in South Dakota, every month they have like 9 counties they pick, and they publish it in the paper that they're going to be doing sobriety checkpoints, and it every single time that's in the online newspaper, I go on there, this is an unconstitutional act against the people. And, but you get all these people going, oh, well, I'm glad they're keeping drunk drivers off the road. So, again, it goes back to that point where people are willing to give up their liberty for some imagined level of security, and we've got to get over that. We have to take personal responsibility. And I don't drink. I'm not going to get nailed at a sobriety checkpoint because I'm drinking. I don't want them looking in my car. I don't want them asking my business. I don't want them interrupting my travel. I don't want to spend the time to do all the bullshit. It isn't about being drunk or that they're saving somebody from a drunk driver. They're imposing something on us, and they're programming us to do this all over the country, and it's absolutely ridiculous and unacceptable in a free country.
I totally agree.
Right.
Yeah, and Ben Franklin said it best. Those that give up liberty for peace and safety deserve neither peace or safety, and it's true, because when you give them an inch, boy, do they take a mile. They take 10 miles, and everything seems to be started, Jim, with these good intentions in mind. Well, we're just going to do these checkpoints, these sobriety checkpoints, to make sure we keep drunk drivers off the road, regardless of the fact that it violates your Fourth Amendment right. And it's been challenged now 10 times, and a couple of times it made it to the Supreme Court. And each time the Supreme Court acknowledged the fact that these checkpoints are unconstitutional, but because they were so effective in taking drunk drivers off the road and making people safe, that they upheld it. And we saw that type of mentality just recently, folks, with the health care decision, where they acknowledged it's unconstitutional, but they upheld it anyway. Folks, we're going to break. We'll be right back. 3 minutes is not a long time to wait. You're listening to the Freedom Link on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Welcome back, folks. Don't forget, every Wednesday and Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye airs here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Fantastic programming. He just interviewed Charlotte Iserbyt, and we'll have that interview in its entirety coming up here very shortly. So make sure you catch his broadcast. Next broadcast tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern. So tune in for that. We're here with Jim Babb, and I'll tell you what, Gwen, very impressive to have somebody that's really gone out of their way to help promote liberty and the knowledge of liberty to people, isn't it?
Exactly, and I love it that people are actually on the street doing things because, like Jim said, once people see you doing that, it inspires them and it gives them the courage to do it too. And, we need to be doing this everywhere all the time about all kinds of issues. And we need to stop being afraid, and we need to start using our voices to be the change we want to see, and to just say not only no, but hell no, this isn't flying in my country, and I'm the people, and, it doesn't work for me.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Jim. Do you think that silence is consent? When people sit on their hands and don't do anything, do you think that by default makes them consent?
No, I wouldn't go that far, but it can certainly be interpreted that way by the tyrants. I think there's a good Frederick Douglass quote out there where he says the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the tolerance of those they oppress. So, basically he's saying, like, look, the tyrants are going to continue to oppress until there's a pushback. So, if you're going to sit there and not push back, well, they're going to keep going. They're going to find your tolerance for abuse, whatever it is, they're going to keep going until they reach it. So my idea is, well, let's prescribe some limits for those tyrants if we possibly can. I just don't want to, I personally don't want to sit there quietly and just find out how bad things are going to get. I look for little opportunities to be effective, little opportunities to push back. And it's surprisingly easy. I mean, I guess if I've learned anything in the past 10 years of doing things like this, it's that, a few people, a few bucks, a few hours of time, and you can cause some major waves. I mean, you can really cause a stir. For instance, this checkpoint had 50 cops. It was multiple townships, the county sheriff, the fire department was there. I mean, this was a major operation. The state police, they had a donut checkpoint set up. I mean, there must have been, 500 donuts, 1,000 donuts. I mean,
donuts.
These guys put enormous resources into this thing, okay?
Oh, yeah, but, you got to think that the revenue generation typically has to be phenomenal for them. I mean, this has to be their bread and butter.
Well, it is, but their bread and butter is are tax victims. Okay, that's one of their, not just that. So regardless of the number of people they catch, sure, they're going to make money on that, and the judges and the probation officers and the lawyers and it's sure that's a big thing. This I was shocked at how big this checkpoint was. I was thinking, okay, a few cops, a couple police cars. I was thinking, 4 cops. How many cops do you need to do this? I had no idea. They took over an entire Best Buy parking lot, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just huge. So the resources they put into this thing were incredible. Meanwhile, we're just some scraggly dudes with about $50 in signs. We were able to completely block their operation. They had no arrests at all from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m., okay? We were able to completely stymie their operation, So, it doesn't take a whole lot to monkey wrench something like that.
Jim, when I looked at the video, I saw that that the cars could turn there where you were at to avoid this. The cars can see people. I mean, you're down the road, you can see the lights and you can see all the activity. And my question is, why would people not turn anyway? But they won't. They'll even though they're drinking and they know they're going to go to jail, they'll go through the checkpoint unless you're standing on the corner telling them there's a checkpoint, turn now. It's unbelievable.
Well, sadly, the victims of these checkpoints are not the drunks, okay? The drunks, sure, they would, but what I found through what we have some sort of inside information is that the people that are getting stopped are the ones that are like, well, I'm not impaired. Of course, I've had a beer, but I'm perfectly safe. Of course, I'll stop and talk to the good officer. They're the ones that end up going to jail. It's people that had they're not impaired. They're not a threat to anyone. They're not the stumbling, bumbling drunk that you think that they're out to protect you from. It's just regular people. It's young girls that are, end up just bawling in tears.
Yeah, easy
because they had no idea, they could get into that. It's
easy targets. And then let me tell you this, Jim, is that it's the same thing with like gun legislation. If you ever take a look at gun legislation, does gun legislation ever affect the bad guys? No. It affects the good guys. Go ahead.
It's the truth, and I should mention something because I'm sure there are listeners out there saying, but you know what? Drunk drivers are bad. How can you do something that's gonna you must be supporting drunk driving? What people need to understand is, look, if you're concerned about drunk driving, okay, that traditional police patrols looking for people swerving around or actually causing harm or putting people in danger, it's far more effective than putting 50 cops at one intersection and waiting to see who drives through and searching 1,000 cars, for hoping for one violator. It's completely ineffective. And when people say, well, how can you do this? We have to stop drunk driving. Well, I would say, okay, well, go tell those cops to get back in their car and drive around and look for somebody actually committing a crime. The rest of us are innocent, and we have no interest in participating in this charade. So, so people need to understand that do I want people to drink and drive? Of course not. That's irresponsible. It puts everyone in danger. Have some common sense. Get a ride, get a cab, whatever. This has nothing to do with that. And if people are genuinely concerned about drunk drivers, they need to tell the police, don't waste your time with these stupid checkpoints. Get in your car and do your job the way it's supposed to be done, and it's far more effective. So, I think that's a key factor that people need to understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of politics involved too. One thing that I've done some looking into, especially with my sheriff, and I confronted him on this, and of course, he did. I don't care about the Fourth Amendment. I care about laws of the state of North Carolina. All right, well, that's pretty good. I'm glad I live here. Anyway, basically, though, what they're afraid. They're afraid of a lot of things. Number one, really revenue from the stop itself is not what they're concerned about. If they don't participate in this stuff, they lose their state funding. The state will pull it. And so will the feds. And what we've come to find out is these police stations, these police departments, as of late, they've really been bulking up. I mean, I'm sure, Jim, that you've noticed. And after the break, we'll in the final segment of hour number one, we'll talk about the police state and where it is today and how far it's advanced just in the last 10 years and what that means to everybody. And a lot of these sheriffs and a lot of these police chiefs have become so dependent on these state and federal resources because their police departments have become so bloated that there's no way the locality can possibly maintain it or support it. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Folks, it's just heating up. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Freedom Link on the Orion Talk Radio Network. I'm Jim Babb of the Valley Forge Revolutionaries. It's been a fantastic 3 segments so far. We got the final segment of hour number one. And we were talking before the break about police state. And, of course, we've seen the police state ratchet up here. I mean, exponentially over the last 10 years. It's been unbelievable how much the intrusion has increased, how much the pushiness, the violent behavior, the hatred that's exhibited by these police officers whose duty, first and foremost, of course, is to the Constitution. They all take the same oath. And secondly, the fact that they've lost the whole idea of what a public servant is supposed to do. It's very, very interesting. And, you know, Gwen, this is something that's been going on steadily, and the government has been really pushing this. I mean, with programs like the 1022 program that allows municipalities to get tanks, helicopters, and any other militarized gear at no cost to them. The only thing they got to do is pay shipping, and it goes to them. So, I mean, what the heck does a freaking police department need a tank for?
Well, that's just the thing. They've become so militarized. I see photographs of riot squads that are better armed, better protected, have better equipment than our soldiers fighting wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it chaps me to no end, because these are weapons and armament to be used against the people. And, you know, have you noticed these protests, Joe? They're just peaceful protests until the police show up, and then it's a riot. Who started the riot? It wasn't the peaceful protesters. There was no riot until the police got there, for crying out loud. Give me a break.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, Jim, what's your thoughts on this evolution of the police state, and where do you think it's leading? Why do you think that they're bulking up so much?
Well, that's a good question, but we've certainly seen it everywhere. I have friends in Keene, New Hampshire, and they were recently involved in a project called Thanks But No Tanks. And they were fighting the small town of Keene, New Hampshire, got a tank. And they tried to oppose it, but it's a Bearcat. It's this $300,000 heavily armored. It's a tank. It's what it is. Right. But I thought it was a very clever campaign they come up with. Thanks, but no tanks. And the community was 90% on their side. Nobody in this town wanted this thing. Nobody saw any reason for it. It was just ridiculous thing to get. City council just couldn't resist the freebie, though. But it's free. We have to have it. We're getting a tank.
Let's have a tank. And what's interesting is they don't look past the end of their nose. So they see, oh, boy, free tank. Oh, boy, free tank. Well, how about maintaining it? Who's going to pay for that? Oh, the taxpayer. Oh, yeah. So we're going to have to write more tickets to fund this. Let's have a checkpoint.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no end to it. There was a story, maybe it was 6 months ago, and I couldn't believe this, but I think it was in Texas, where a county sheriff they were practicing with their drone, and they crashed it into their tank by accident. And I had to laugh. I'm like,
that is poetic justice.
But, you know, where is this going to end? I have no idea, you know, but we've got we've got drone surveillance in the air. We've got these, you know, militarized police with all of these vehicles, all these high-powered weapons. They're pumped up full of steroids. You know, half of them have just come back from wars abroad, where they've done nothing but kick in doors and disarm people for a living.
PTSD and the whole nine.
So now they come home and they're looking at us as the enemy. It's very disturbing. It's a very disturbing trend. You know, I wish I could say, you know, I saw some kind of silver lining on this or some potential, you know, but it just means that we have to step up our game as well. And while they use violence and while they use intimidation, we use love and we use voluntary cooperation. When they're centralized and bureaucratic, we have to be more decentralized and adaptable. So you know, whatever they do, we need the opposite tactic. You know, violence is their game. You know, we're not going to beat them on that game. So we have to beat them with the video camera. We have to expose what they are. And part of that means, you know, just being out there with a camera talking about what they're doing, not being afraid to at least document what they're doing so people can see, no, these guys aren't out there helping little old ladies across the street. You know, these are armed gangs that have a license to commit whatever violence they want to commit. And we need to just expose them for that. Philadelphia, they're doing hundreds of thousands of warrantless stops. They call it stop and frisk. And the mayor brags about it. They're like, oh, yeah, you see some guy, you stop him. You, up against the wall. I'm going to pat you down. Well, yeah, I don't like the way you look. Hundreds of thousands of times per year, mostly to inner city minorities. Completely, for the most part, completely defenseless to defend themselves against this kind of abuse. So, you know, our work is cut out for us, you know, to try to reach out to people. Let them know you're not alone. You know, there's people willing to stand with you. You know, let's understand what our rights are and band together. Keep our cameras out, document what we see, and expose them for the violent thugs that they are, because that's all they are. At least, you know, that's my strategy.
Well, that's a fantastic strategy, isn't it, Gwen?
It's wonderful.
I think it's fantastic that you do what you do, Jim. And I hope that people listening tonight are inspired. I mean, listen to it. This is great. I mean, this is what activism does is it energizes you and it makes you want to do more. I mean, not just being an activist is a selfless thing. I mean, there's a lot of sacrifice involved, sometimes more than others, but I'll tell you what, very rewarding. And Jim, I tell you what, I applaud you for everything that you do. Can you plug any websites that you may have or any information that you may want to get out to the listeners tonight?
Sure. Anybody that's in the Philadelphia area can Google Valley Forge Revolutionaries. We have a monthly meeting and, you know, be happy to meet people interested in freedom. There's for people that are interested in documenting the police and trying to engage that gang, I highly recommend copblock.org. And these are the people that inspire me. You can watch videos of people documenting police, standing up, holding their ground, you know, nullifying police power just by not kneeling. You know, you don't have to do you don't have to be aggressive or violent. You just don't have to kneel down when they look at you. So, you know, copblock.org, you know, really cool website. I've learned an awful lot, and I've been heavily inspired by the folks there, the videos that I've seen. One of my other websites is WeWon'tFly.com, which for people interested in air travel and opposing the Transportation Security Administration tyranny. Check that out. Drop by our Facebook page. You know, always look forward to hearing from anybody that's interested in standing up for freedom.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Jim. It was great to have you on the broadcast, and I hope to have you on again real soon.
Anytime. It's my pleasure.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Jim.
That's Jim Babb of the Valley Forge Revolutionaries. And we're at the end of hour number one. Let's talk about what's coming up in hour number two, Gwen. In hour number two, there was an interesting caller that called into the Alex Jones show. And his name was Jim, and that's all he would give. And to be quite honest with you, I don't blame him, especially after what happened to that poor TSA supervisor in Rhode Island. Boy, did he get wrung through the ringer. But anyway, I want to play a clip from this because this kind of highlights what's coming down the pipe. And, you know, of course you don't know for sure if this guy's BS or not. But I'll tell you what, there was a sound in his voice that kind of made it sound genuine. So I want to play it for you guys, and you make the decision for yourself. But very good information. We also have the DNC chairman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, says non-compliance with Obamacare will not be tolerated. And we'll talk about that as well as Midwest ranchers and lawmakers protesting EPA flyovers with drones. That's right. They're using drones to enforce environmental regulations. We've got a buildup in the Persian Gulf. We'll talk about that. And something I like that, Gwen, you gave me today. IRS hit with an audit for mismanagement and fraud.
Woohoo!
It's about time there was a little bit of justice in this world. Now we'll see if it actually bears any fruit. I doubt it. I doubt it. So don't go away, folks. We've got so much to talk about in the next hour. So Gwen and I will bring that to you. So stay tuned for the news, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Freedom Link on the Orion Talk